Hey guys, what's going on? So I realized that February just flew by. February was a very busy month for me. Busy weather-wise because the winter out here was brutal and the workload was very heavy. So we're gonna do a day in the life of a social worker. So I'm gonna bless you guys with two videos for the month of March since I didn't get a chance to record in February at all. So I'm gonna do one video at the beginning of the month and we're gonna do another video at the end of the month. So what I decided to do for this video, since one of the things that I was actually working on a lot in the month of February is conservators. So I decided that my topic for this video is going to talk about conservators. So let's talk about what a conservator is. So every state, I guess, do things slightly different, right? But for the most part, if you're a hospital social worker or even in a nursing home, because when I used to work in a nursing home for the state, I used to do conservatorships as well. If you have a patient that had deemed to lack capacity means they are unable to make their needs known. They're unable to come up with a safe discharge plan. Their living situation is inhabitable. Some of them live alone. Some of them have family, but the family is not assisting. So if you have a patient that has deemed to lack capacity, and a doctor has to deem a patient to lack capacity, it has to be either a psychiatrist. We also have geriatric services, and it can actually be a regular medical doctor, even though I can tell you in the hospital, the doctors, hospitalists, they don't do that. Usually if I have a patient that I'm questioning capacity, I would tell the doctor, hey, can you put a consult for evaluation for capacity? And depending on the patient, so if the patient is, again, older than 65 with no mental health, then it would go to geriatrics. If the patient is 65, where sometimes they have both mental health and they have some geriatric, like some early signs of dementia, some other issues going on, then it could be either or. Or if a patient is young or older, no matter what age, right, and has severe mental health or just some mental health issues that's actually getting in their way of, being able to make decisions for themselves or making the best decisions for themselves, then that would be psych. And then we have patients that come in as trauma, bad motor vehicle accidents, where now they have a TBI, traumatic brain injury. So this person is never going to get better. And they are bedbound, need long-term placement. So that could be the doctor to do that. You don't need a psychiatrist or geriatrics to do that. That can just be regular. Sometimes the surgeons will do it. Sometimes, again, the hospitalists, if they get discharged to the hospitalist service. So we have two types of conservators. You can have a conservator person and a conservator of a state, or you can have both. Most of our patients usually mean both. Conservator person, they're unable to make decisions for themselves. Conservator of a state, they need somebody to manage their finances, make sure the bills are paid. If they need someone to apply for Medicaid so that they can have long-term benefits to pay for that facility that they're going to stay in. So, yeah. Or if they have a home, the conservator state can also sell their house to use that money to pay for their care. If they're going to go home and stay home with private care. So you need a conservative estate because that's the only person that's going to be able to get into their finances, their bank accounts, and be able to look all that stuff up. And a conservator can be anybody. So it can be family, or it could be friends, or a lot of our conservators, if they are, see, people in my hospital say conservator, even though I'm like, no, they say conservator, and I'm like, no, it's conservator, C-O-N, conservator. So remember, it is conservator, okay? Conservator person, conservator of a state, not conservator, but they do say that. But anyway, so if you have, it could be a family, it could be a close friend, or it could be an attorney. So a lot of times when our patients do not have family, we file a petition, which is a PC 370, which is the physician's eval. That has to be completed first by the doctor. Once you have that in your hand, then you do your part, which is the petition, a PC 300 or I can't remember the form's names, like 301. Again, it might be different in your state. I'm speaking about the state of Connecticut. So a petition for conservator would be voluntary or involuntary. If it's a voluntary conservator and family are going to do it, then you can give it to the family. They can take that to the court and file it themselves. If it's involuntary, then that's when we apply, send it to the court, and the patient cannot be discharged until the court date, because that is an involuntary conservator. So a conservator person is appointed by the probate court to oversee the financial or personal affairs of an adult. In an involuntary conservatorship, a conservator is appointed only if the court determines that the individual is unable to care for him or herself or unable to manage his or her financial affairs. In a voluntary conservatorship, the court appoints a conservator on the request of an adult who seeks assistance in managing his or her affairs without making a finding that the individual is incapable. So again, and there are different fees. Like the state of Connecticut, I want to say the fees are now like up to $275. And you can get a waiver, but you have to bring your tax forms so they can see if you make below a certain amount, then those fees can be waived. And let's see, how long does it take? Again, the moment you file the petition, it takes about 30 days to get a court hearing. So in the meantime, if it's an involuntary, that patient's hanging out at the hospital until we conserve them. And once we conserve them, then you work with the attorney to come up with a safe discharge plan, which is usually the hospital recommends, long-term placement. So they're going to go to a nursing home. But again, sometimes our patients need long-term insurance, Medicaid. So then the conservator is who that's actually going to apply. And this is why majority of our patients will have conservator person and conservator of estate. So we do a lot of that in the hospital. I used to be at court at least, I can't even tell you. I was at court several times. And for patients from all walks of life, all background. I mean, the one patient I had really, really broke my heart. He was like 40 something, but bad diabetic, bad hypertension, non-compliant with pretty much life, independent, looks like me and you, but when he speaks, you see where there is no capacity. You see where there is no insight. And, again, he looks like a typical, he was a black male, typical decent size. If you see him walking on the street, you think this man is fine. But if you ask him a question and he's telling you, no, the sheets are over there, and yeah, I'm doing laundry. Well, how are you doing laundry, sir? Oh, I'm in the room, and yeah, I'm doing laundry. Well, how? Don't you need soap? Don't you need water? Don't you need a washing machine and a dryer? No, you don't need all that. So we have patients that look like me and you that are independent, but clearly lack capacity. And then you have patients that are in the early sign of dementia. So those patients get a little tricky, because I have been in court where my petition has been thrown out. I have been in court where the judge has chewed me out. So trust me, going in front of the judge, I always say, if you are filing for a person, you need to make sure you know your patient or client. You need to have, like, I'm the kind of person that I type up a little cheat sheet to have their name, family, because you have to locate everyone. When you file on a petition, there is a space that asks you if you have tried everything to locate family, because family needs to be notified. Because sometimes what happens is that some of these patients don't know their families, or they haven't been in contact with their family. And now several years later, so-and-so shows up and say, wait, I'm the son, no one reached out to me. Well, we did. We tried. He didn't know your number. You guys haven't had a relationship, so it was a court-appointed attorney. And you can always get that changed. Like if later on family comes about and they want to take on the conservatorship responsibility, then all they have to do is petition the court, and we can get, the attorney can be removed and the family can be placed. Just like we had families that were placed for conservators for patients that weren't doing anything. So then we also petition the court to have the court remove that person. Sometimes it's an attorney that you can't find, you can't call. We want to change code of status. You have in order for you to change the code of status, you need the conservator to take the paperwork, which is usually 2 letters from 2 different doctors to state reasons to why they feel that this code status should be changed, present it to the court, and then the court makes a decision, and then the conservator brings it back, you know, the decree back to us, and then we let the doctor know. So just because someone is also conserved, think a very important thing to keep in mind, which we go back and forth with the doctors all the time. Because someone is conserved, you cannot force them to do what they don't want to do. So if we have a patient that's like, I'm not being discharged, we have to try our hardest to work with that patient, to convince them, to encourage them, because the conservator cannot force them to do anything. If you have a patient, like we have patients that are mental health, for example, that are constantly having children, the conservator cannot force them to get a contraceptive put in. Conservator cannot do that. Conservator can consent and say, yes, I would like them to get a 5-year IUD, but you can't hold the patient down to put a 5-year IUD if the patient says no. So, you know, we always go back and forth just because a patient's conserved and they're like, you send them to a nursing home and they start kicking and screaming. Guess what? That nursing home sends them right back to the hospital. So conservators have, let's just say, they have a tough job, right? They have patients that are just the pleasantly confused ones. They're the best because they're just pleasantly demented. They're just gonna, they don't know what's going on. But the ones that's kind of 50-50 in between, and then you have our patients that lack capacity at one point, had a conservator in place, and then now was able to get a new evaluation a couple of years later and got themselves unconserved. And that happens a lot, believe it or not, especially with our alcoholics that come in, they're drunk, they're out their mind. Some of them do not recover for quite some time. But then later on, let's say they've been in the nursing home for 2 to 3 years. Now they're alert, they're oriented, their mental status is back to fully functioning, and they get a new psych eval and they have capacity. They petition the court, they get themselves unconserved, they leave the nursing home, and they return back to whatever it is that they were doing. So, you know, just this month I've been dealing with a very, very difficult case, and it is a conservator case. And let's just say the person was at one hospital that deemed him to lack capacity, but since he's been at my hospital, we never deemed him to lack capacity. And again, he's one of those persons that have history of substance abuse and several falls. So at the time, yes, there was some mental status altered mental status going on. But then eventually what happens when you stay in a hospital long enough, you clear up, which he did. By that time, they had already submit their petition for involuntary conservator. And then he went to a nursing home, got discharged, came to my hospital now. So he was deemed to have capacity. So he agreed that he needs some assistance, but he does not want an involuntary conservator. He would prefer a voluntary conservator. So I've been dealing with a whole bunch of issues, not surrounding the voluntary conservator, just surrounding everything else that's going on with his personal life and his housing situation, right? So, you know, but yeah, February went by very quickly. I mean, it's a short month. I can't stand the month of February. The winters here are just brutal. Like, this winter was rough. Yeah, I said to my mom, I was ready to move to Texas, and I don't even like the heat. Then I saw what happened to Texas. Literally, right when I said that, the next day, I think everything happened at Texas. Then I was like, okay, forget it. I'm over Texas now, right? Okay. But yeah, February was very tough. The winter was very tough here. I mean, I have a truck. Let's just say it's just snowed and snowed. It's cold. It was icy. I slid a couple times. Like, it was just a brutal month. I'm so ready. I was so happy to say goodbye to February. I really was. I was so over. I'm welcoming March right now because I can't wait for springtime. So yeah, so I'm so sorry that I missed February social work video, but I'm gonna make up for it, guys. So I'm going to give you 2 videos this month. So this one, I just really want to talk about conservators. And if you guys have any questions, leave it down below. I'll be happy to answer any questions. This was just basic information because, again, depending on the state you are, things might be slightly different. So I'm just speaking about Connecticut right now. So but anyway, guys, I'm tired. This is my robe that I put on. This is my makeup robe in the morning. So if you see stains, don't judge me. It's because, you know, this is what I used to do my makeup. And I washed it, but Sometimes makeup don't wash away right away. But anyway, it's almost, I think, 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm gonna get ready to take a shower and relax before I go to bed. Bye.